Hi, welcome to episode 388 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarn and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, August 8th. And we are packing up and getting ready to leave on vacation. I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. But I hope that you have had a wonderful weekend and that your week is off to a good start. My parents visited this weekend. They were driving cross country. They're going up to see my sister and their grandkids in Chicago. And so they came through here and we had a couple meals with them and just hung out. It has been beastly hot in the 90s and 100s last week. It's a little bit cooler this week, and I am only wearing a sweater because I am in the house and I got chilled in the air conditioning. It is hot and humid and all the things that summer in the Midwest brings, although we have not had a ton of rain this week or storms, so I would love that. But we are headed to a cooler place on vacation, so I am super excited about that. So I've done some crafting this week, not as much as I would like, as always, but I've also felt a little bit at loose ends or at odds because I have finished up a bunch of projects and I am waiting to start new things either until we leave on vacation or I'm waiting to start my next samples until I get home. So I'm a little bit between projects and you'll see that I have gone back and picked up some other things. So I hope you are doing well, and we will not have a spinning section today because I have not touched my wheel. As you know, I spun continuously throughout July through the Tour de France, and then I continued through the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. And as of the end of July, I kind of put my wheel aside and I will not be touching it again until I get home. So I have no spins. Today is all about knitting and a little bit of tea. So my parents came into town this weekend, and while we brought in takeout for most meals, I didn't want to do a ton of cooking because it was hot and also because we're trying to clean out the fridge. I did make a really big pitcher of iced tea, and for that I used London tea that I got in Covent Gardens what seems like eons ago, but was January of 2019 when Wes and I visited London. And this is a blend of Darjeeling and Ceylon tea. So my parents both like black tea, and that seemed to be the best way to go. So I made a big pitcher of it, and we drank it while they were here, and I have a little bit more left. And then actually I just mixed it with a little bit of cranberry juice today. So it's got a little bit of fruit juice and a lot of tea. And that's what I'm drinking in my Minions mug. So no hot tea today, definitely iced. So, and sometimes people ask me, the way I make my iced tea is I make really concentrated hot tea. So for instance, to make a pitcher, I took about 8 spoonfuls of this tea and heated up about between a cup and 2 cups of water, and then I brewed the tea hot, really, really concentrated in that cup or 2 of water, and then I went ahead and poured that into an almost full pitcher of cold water, and then I just stick that in the fridge. If you are not using like pre-sweetened tea, or if you don't have tea with fruit bits in it or some of those kinds of things, I find that it can usually sit in the fridge up to a week or so and still be good, so I can drink it throughout the week. If you are sweetening it yourself, or it comes pre-sweetened, or it has fruit pieces or some other things in there that have sugars, you do have to watch it because sometimes after a few days it will develop a little mold on the surface. So just proceed accordingly, keep an eye on it, and enjoy it, or just make a half strength, make half a version if you'd like, just to keep it going. My pitcher does seal, but of course it's not a perfect seal, and sugary things, and things that are made from real food sometimes grow other things. So just so you know, that's kind of what I do with my iced tea. So let's talk about the knits. I do have a finished knit, and actually I'm getting ready to send it off this afternoon to the photographer. This is a quick knit. It is a cowl. It is called Pop and Lock, and it's by Lisa K. Ross. And it is one of those sort of combination cowl shawl things. So you knit it more or less as a shawl. It comes out sort of roughly a triangular piece. and you knit it back and forth as you would a shawl, and then at the end you seam up from the starting seam then to a bit of the ending. I'll show you as I talk through it. And that it becomes a cowl, which is really nice. It's worn kind of kerchief style. And what I really like about those is that you don't have to continually adjust them. If you are trying to wear a really short bandana, you either have to tie it, you have to secure it with a shawl pin, or you have to kind of constantly play with it to keep it in place. And the nice thing about joining those sides together is that then it keeps it in place. So this one was knit on the bias, and I showed you I had finished the garter section last week when we met. As I said, this is called Pop and Lock, and I knit it in 2 colorways of Zen Yarn Garden in a their super fine fingering base, which is 100% superwash merino. It is really super soft and squishy, and the main color is black, which is their midnight colorway, and then the contrast colorway is a speckle here that they are calling Pop Rocks. And so I knit this on the bias. What happens is it grows on the bias. So you start at this section right up here. You'll see where I seamed it, but you start with this small number of stitches and you continue to grow it on one side. And expand as you go through. And I had finished this portion last time and I was just getting ready for the finish, and the end is a mosaic chart that is really beautiful. It was quick knitting. It's not a huge width of stitches. I think when you're done, I don't want to give it away, but you have less than 125 stitches across, so it's not something where you're knitting 300 stitches and it's a huge row. And so you finish your you do a few extra rows up here as kind of a border, and then you do your mosaic knit, and then you go ahead and knit the final few rows. You just echo the rows at the top, and then it is finished off with an I-cord. So then I blocked it flat, and then when it is finished, you seam it. And I just went ahead and seamed my one side to the other. Technically, you're seaming at a perpendicular because you are seaming like your cast-on seam to part of the diagonal I-cord at the end. So I used my darker color so that I didn't have anything showing, and I just kind of did a it wasn't a Kitchener stitch. It wasn't precisely a mattress stitch either. I kind of echoed the cast-on stitches like I would for a Kitchener stitch, but then I picked up some of the inner loops of the I-cord to join it. She doesn't specify in the pattern. I think actually she says maybe mattress stitch, but I went ahead and did that. And so that creates my really cute cowl that you can wear. And it is just super, super fun. I guess I should, I don't know, I can't really stand up, but let me see if I can. Whoop. Where I have the camera, I'm trying to balance. Okay, so you can see it is just a little bit of I'll just kind of, it's a cute cowl. It's a little bit loose, but it is nice as an accessory. It is nice and squishy and warm. I mean, I wouldn't potentially wear this on the coldest of days because it is not like a real tight cowl around your neck. But that said, it is a really nice decorative cowl and it can add a little bit of extra warmth, or you can put it on under your coat to just kind of seal that in. But it is really, really delightful. And as I said, it is called Pop and Lock by Lisa K. Ross, and it was a super fun knit. I would estimate that I used somewhere around 500 yards. The pattern called for, I think, 300 yards of the main color and maybe 200 yards of the contrast color. And I would say I definitely used about 2/3 of the ball, 2/3 to 3/4 of the ball of the main color, and I had a little bit of the mini left over. The mini was 200 yards. So I started with 600 and I haven't weighed it yet, but my guess is that I used roughly 500 yards, like between 450 and 500. So it was a pretty quick knit project, and this will be lovely. It is, as I said, going off to the photographer today, so they can photograph it while I'm gone, and hopefully will be a new kit from Zen Yarn Garden this fall. I do have a sweater and another shawl to knit for them, but I have not cast on for them yet. I'm going to wait until I come home. The sweater will require a little bit of swatching, which I'm excited about. And then it's a cute fingering weight cardigan with kind of a little bit of decorative brioche on the back, which I thought was really interesting. We have gotten some requests. So I I do not technically work for Zen Yarn Garden. I'm an independent contractor with them, and I do a lot of their sample knits, and then I do a little bit of teaching with them through their Tutorial Tuesdays, which are free Tuesday evening, a couple times a month sessions. You join by Zoom, and they are free to attend, although you do have to register. You can find information on the Zen Yarn Garden website, which is zenyarngarden.com. And we do a few of these sessions each month. Roxanne, who had Zen Yarn Garden, started them when the pandemic started, just as a way for us to gather and knit. And we talk about technique and pattern and a variety of things. And one of the things is that we ask people what they would like to see. And we got several requests whether we had a cardigan pattern knit in fingering weight yarn. And so I said to Roxanne, we ought to do one. So she sent me some yarn and we picked a cardigan pattern. And that is the first knit that I will knit when I get home. So I will be sure to talk to you about that then. So I finished this one. I only seamed it together today, but I finished it and started blocking it, I believe on, well, no, I finished it last week, maybe Wednesday night. So it has been blocking and sitting for a few days. And like I said, after I finish chatting with you, I'm going to go ahead and ship that off to our wonderful photographer so that that can get into her August batch of photos. So next I worked a little bit on Miles' sweater, and I have talked to you guys about this before. I am knitting Crozon, which is C-R-O-Z-O-N. I don't know whether it's Crozon or Crozon. And it is by Lisa Chemery, who is, I believe, Frogginet Knits. She does quite a few sweaters for children, babies and children. They're really simple. They're lovely. Crozon is a top-down raglan. It's super simple and plain. It does have stripes, which I am omitting in my version, but it is basically for a worsted weight top-down raglan pullover, and it is just a sweet little sweater, and I picked it because it is going to be sort of a blank canvas for what I want to do. My nephew Miles will be 6 this fall, and he is a massive fan of Super Mario Brothers, and I thought his favorite character was Mario, but it turns out his favorite character is Luigi, and so I am making him a Super Mario Brothers themed sweater. Basically, I am making the Lisa Chemery's sweater as, like I said, a blank canvas, and then I'm going to duplicate stitch some of the Super Mario Brothers characters onto the sweater. So at least right now, it's a fairly boring knit, straightforward, very simple. It just looks plain, but the fun will come at the end when I have a really, really, really bright green, and I talked to you a little bit about that a couple weeks ago. You'll see more of that in September when I finish the sweater and, you know, once I finish the knitting, and then I can do some duplicate stitching and have some fun with it. So I did work on this a little bit this week. You might remember I don't even think it was last week, I think it was a few weeks ago, where I showed you I had cast on for the collar, I had joined in the round, and I had just started doing the raglan shaping. And I had hoped to finish the raglan shaping before I left on vacation, and I'm happy to say that I succeeded. So I worked on this for several days, and I literally am just at the point where I pulled off for separating the sleeves. And as you can see, I have a cute little top-down raglan sweater. I am going to continue on the body until I get to the bottom and do the ribbing and the hem, and then I'm going to go back and do the sleeves. And it is all being done in Dream and Color Classy, which is their worsted weight yarn. It's 250 yards per skein for I believe 113 grams, and the colorway is Bedtime, which is just this really gorgeous royal blue, and it's just so ever so slightly like semi-solid kettle dyed, so you have a little bit of variation, so it's got a little bit of depth to it, but it's not a lot. And then I have a bright green, which I got from it'll come to me, Neighborhood Fiber Company. I have a bright green, and I will be using that for Luigi, and I can't remember who else I'm putting on there. I know when I look at it, but I don't know the characters. I was not a video game kid, but my nephew totally is, and so my hope is that I can put Luigi down kind of at the bottom of the sweater, and then maybe either magic mushrooms or coins or something kind of across the bottom, so it's got a little bit of movement to it. So I will probably work on this a little bit more before I leave if I have time. I did get through exactly what I wanted to before I left, and now I just need to, you know, finish up the plain knitting, and then I get to do the fun part. His birthday is in October, so I basically have until October to finish this, and it will be something that I work on when I get home. I probably should have been working on it more and cranking it out while I don't have a lot on the needles, but as often happens, when I don't have something that's important or a deadline, well, it is a deadline, but when I don't have something with a rapidly upcoming deadline and I'm a little bit at odds, I pick up other things. So that is what I worked on a bunch this week and will continue to work on. And that is Miles' sweater. So, and I am alternating skeins on that one. I have 3 skeins, and so I have them wound up, and I have only been using 2 at a time. I used 2 to do kind of the top and the raglan shaping. I think I'll wind up the 3rd one and use like 2 and 3 to do the rest of the body, and then I can use 1 and 3 to finish off the sleeves. I do that just because you never know when there's going to be a little bit of an inconsistency in a dye lot, and if you are alternating skeins with indie dyed yarn, you are much less likely to see an obvious line or demarcation where you changed skeins. It is not mandatory, but if you don't, sometimes you will end up with results that you're not pleased with. So I almost always alternate my skeins if I'm going to be working on something with multiple skeins. So that brings me to, I do have one tiny new cast on, and I have one old whip that I picked back up. We'll start with the tiny new cast on, and that is, I have been talking all year about, and actually for the last couple years, knitting hats out of old stash and leftovers. And I went to the stash, I had pulled a whole bunch of stuff out at the beginning of the year and put it in kind of a fabric bin so that I could use it to knit hats, and I went back to it to see what was in there, and I was actually kind of surprised to see, I can't remember if this was when I was knitting samples for a yarn shop and I just had leftovers, or what, because I had 1.5 balls each of 2 colorways of Rowan Lima. And I don't think they make Lima anymore. It is a chainette construction, primarily alpaca, although it does have some viscose, and I think it does have some wool in it, and I don't have either of the labels with me. But I had 1.5 balls in this kind of sage green colorway, and this is still like the half ball that I started with. And then I had 1.5 balls in this kind of mustardy yellow. And I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with them, but I thought maybe I could use them together. And so I went back to a hat pattern that has been in my stash for a while, and I have knit other versions of this hat. This is called the June hat, and I believe it is by Courtney Kelly, and it was a part of, they've done a couple pattern collections called the Year of Hats. This is Kelburn Woolens, and they designed the Year of Hats to coincide with the launch of a couple of their different yarns. The first Year of Hats was done in worsted weight yarns, and that was when they launched their Germantown. And then they did, I can't remember, I think it was last year, might be this year, I can't remember. Either last year or this year, they started another Year of Hats, which was when they launched Germantown Bulky. So this time around, it is bulky hats. The one I am knitting is from the first edition, and it is called the June hat, like I said, by Courtney Kelly. And it is this really great kind of reverse stockinette with kind of a slip stitch detail, and it calls to be knit in 2 colors. So I started with green as my main color, and I did a nice ribbing, about 1.5 inches of ribbing, and then I went into the pattern, and I am just at the point where it is about time to decrease for the crown. And I didn't have the pattern pulled up the other night when I was at knit night last night, and then it hit 10 p.m. and so I just gave it up. This project has been sitting next to my computer, and it is just the perfect kind of roundy project, because it's a 2-row pattern and you just do it over and over and over, and the only bit of complication is that now I'm going to be doing some decreases, but as I remember, that's not terribly difficult either. So I will be finishing this, and actually I still have 2 balls left, so I might actually do another hat in the opposite colorways. So I don't know, I may just put them back in the box and do that later, but when in doubt and in need of a short project, or not sure what you're doing, or in need of something simple that you can just round and round at a meeting, a hat is always a good project. And so I was trying not to let myself cast on anything new, because I'm going to take a few new cast-ons for the trip, and I really didn't want to have more whips going, but at the same time I feel like I sort of give myself a little pass for the hats that I'm knitting, because I'm going to donate these to one of many causes. This one's a little bit thin for Wool Aid, but it is wool and alpaca, so it's super, super warm, so I might donate it there. I probably won't donate it to, I do knit for kids hats that I send to a yarn store that's a client of mine. I send them a collection each year. I probably won't because as far as I remember, I don't think the Rowan Lima is machine washable and dryable. And so I don't want to send kids something that won't go through the wash because that just, will come out all felted and small. And the other place that I could send it is I have knit a few hats this year for Knit the Rainbow, which is an organization that supports LGBTQIA who are in New York and other places that are facing housing insecurity. And so they need some warm weather gear for the cold seasons. So I have sort of 3 options, and any hat that I knit goes into one of those boxes. And when I have enough, or fall comes around, as it will soon, I'm going to, get those priority mailboxes stuffed as full as I can and send those out so that people have cold weather gear. And mainly this year I have been using up some of my leftover handspun, or some of my early handspun that's not good enough to sell, but where I can cut out the bad sections and knit something from it. I have been using my stash of leftover yarns, which comes from either samples that I've knit or projects that I've done in the past, or little bits and bobs that are left over from those things, or a variety of yarns that just sort of come into my possession. So I'm not going to take away full points for not casting on... I'm not going to beat myself up too much for casting on something new, since this one is kind of a year-long challenge to myself. And basically, I knit these year-round, and I just hold on to them. Come January, February, March, nobody needs hats anymore, so I just go ahead and hold on to them, and then I have boxes to send out in the fall. For instance, last year, I think actually I sent my box out in October, and then I knit a whole bunch of scrappy hats around Christmas, and I still have them. I have just been sitting on them for the next collection. When somebody says I need a bunch of hats, I have a big old bag of hats to send them. So that is kind of what I do in my spare time when I need a little palette cleansing project or an instant gratification knit, and slowly I am working through. I would not say I am moving through my leftover stash at any great speed, but I am working things down, and if I get 2 balls out of stash, great. So that is, again, the June hat, and that is what I've been working on. I will say, unfortunately, these hats are only available for download via Ravelry. They are free, but you have to download the PDF through Ravelry, which is not great. I downloaded them all when they came out. So I have them now, and I can go back to them, but unfortunately they don't put them on their website. I wish they did. The bulky ones you might find on their website because that has been a more recent collection, but I'm sad to say that I could not find this one on there. So it will not be linked in the show notes, because in my show notes on my blog, which is thecornerofknitandtea.com, I don't link to Ravelry anymore because I know that it causes problems for some people. So any pattern link on my Ravelry page that you go to click on will take you somewhere else. Usually I can take you to the designer page, to Payhip, to Etsy, one of those other places. If it is not linked, that does not mean it is not available. It means it is available, but only on Ravelry, and I just choose not to link there. So that is what's going on there. So finally, I pulled a whip out of my stash. And I think I've shown this to you before, but I did not spend a lot of time on it. It is a whip from a knit-along, and I was helping teach the knit-along, and I never finished the knit-along. So, 2 years ago, last spring, not this past spring in 2022, but spring 2021, I knit a version of the Painting Honeycombs blanket, which is by Stephen West, West Knits, and it is, he did a series of Painting Honeycombs patterns. There was a hat, there's a sweater, there's a couple shawls, and there's a blanket, and I believe it's all available as a collection, or you can buy the patterns individually, and it is a stitch pattern that is sort of reminiscent of honeycomb. And he used, in all of those designs, he often used a main color, and then he used a variety of other colors to sort of create color stripes and colorful knits. And I knit his blanket, which in the big version is big enough to put on a double or queen size bed. It is a huge project. I think it was 15 skeins of worsted weight yarn. It was heavy and it was glorious. And I knit a full-size Painting Honeycombs blanket using Zen Yarn Garden yarns. It was a sample knit for them, and then they proceeded to do a blanket knit along where people got the yarn got more yarn each month, and then we had a bunch of Zoom sessions to knit the project together. As part of teaching that, I got asked if I wanted another set so that I could show what I was doing as I was doing it. And I had fairly recently finished. We started the knit along, I think, in October last year. So I had fairly recently finished the big blanket, and I thought, oof, I do not want to make a huge blanket again. Also, I am a huge blanket knitter, and I have blankets everywhere in this house. So I do not necessarily, while I love, love, love knitting them, I do not necessarily always need another blanket. So I decided that instead of knitting the full-size blanket, I would knit the smaller size blanket, which can be a baby blanket or a lapgan. You know, it's kind of a throw size, whereas the big one is a huge bed size. This one, I can't remember if it's going to be like 40 inches square, but I mean, it's much, much smaller. Whereas the other one used, I think, was it 15 skeins of yarn? This one uses 5 and 8 maybe. It's literally like half the work. So I decided to start a lap size one, and I did, and I got maybe about a third of the way through it. And then the knit along was over, and I was working on so many other samples, I never finished it. So this week, when I was trying to decide what to knit and nothing really sounded good and whatever, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go back. I'm going to randomly pick a whip up. I generally try not to have works in progress on my needles that linger. I generally try to get through them and finish them and have it done, or not. But over the years, as I have taken on more deadline knits and more sample knits, sometimes my projects kind of fall by the wayside. So this one fell by the wayside, but I decided to pick it up, and I'm not going to finish it. I'm certainly not going to finish it before I leave on vacation, but I have been doing a couple rows a night, or a couple sections a night, and that has been really nice because it's nice to see it grow, and it's nice to know that eventually I will finish this and it will stop being yarn to be used in the stash and it will be a blanket. And I don't know whether I'll keep it for myself or send it off as a gift to someone. I really haven't decided. I do love the colors. And so I'm working on that. So that was a long-winded way of telling you I picked up a whip and I'm working on it. And this is what I have so far. I know that I have showed this to you as I started it, but I haven't shared it in a while. I selected a subset of the colors that Zen Yarn Garden dyed for this blanket kit. For the full-size blanket kit, there are 8 colors and a main color. And what I did is I selected 5 of the colors, well, technically 6. I selected, so basically the kit has 9 colors in it. A main color, which in the main kit that we did was a dark gray, and then 8 contrasting colors. And basically you just run through the contrasting colors kind of in any way you want. I have been doing them just in order. I picked an order for the 5 and I just keep repeating that order. And you repeat it multiple times throughout the blanket, basically until you're out of yarn. Each blanket says how many times you should repeat it, but like for this one, I'm going to go until basically I run out of my main color, until I can't do anymore. So the colors that I picked, and I don't remember all her colorway names, are this kind of hot pink magenta, this kind of pale petal pink that's coming across a little bit as white now, but it is a really pale petal pink, the orange, the yellow, and this light blue. And then what I picked, I know that the main color that I picked is called Norway. In the main project, it was a dark gray, and Norway was one of the colors in that project, but I decided to kind of do a teal main color blanket and then do the bright pops of color in there. And I am really, really happy with how this is coming out. It's just gorgeous. The pattern is pretty easy. Basically, the pattern's like 16 rows, I think. Okay, the pattern's 20 rows because you basically have 2 stripes. So you can see here, it's kind of got that honeycomb pattern offset, and it will look more like honeycomb once I block it. It kind of tends to scrunch up a little bit on the needle. But so you put the colored sections behind, and then you have kind of these raised garter sections that create your honeycomb. It is done with slip stitches, and as you can see from the edge, there are basically 2 patterns. There's where you start with the color, and there's where you start with, well, I guess both times you start with the color, but they're staggered. So basically from the bottom Well, okay, from the beginning of the orange all the way through what's on the needles now, that is about 20 rows of working, and that is the entire pattern. And you just keep repeating it over and over and over, and you just keep swapping your colors out. So that's what I've been working on. I think when I picked it up, I was like finishing up the dark pink section, so I've put a few more sections on it, and my hope is maybe I can do a few more before I leave. This project does include a lot of weaving in ends, and you can weave your ends in a couple ways. Stephen West developed a technique he calls the weave in the Stephen. I actually don't like that one. I did that the first time, and I decided I didn't want to do it this time. I think it creates a slightly bulky finish on the back side of your work that I didn't like so much. So I have been just traditionally weaving. I've been weaving in ends as I would do traditionally, but you can really do either. And the only thing I will tell you is stay ahead of them, because you end up with a back that's looking like this. Now, most of these are woven in. I think I stopped weaving in right about here. So all my bottom ends are woven in. I just haven't clipped them yet, and I have maybe like one full repeat and a bit where I haven't, and actually I think I'll probably take time this evening to weave in these ends. Generally what I do is I weave in my ends before I block, and then I block. My reason for that is when you block, things stretch and grow a little bit, and it really irks me to no end when I weave in my end snugly. I snip it, and then that end pops out when I'm blocking. So I always weave in my ends before I block, so that I don't have to do anything after but trim, but I don't trim usually beforehand, because then it just makes me crazy if I have to go back and try and tuck that little bit in. So that is what I've been working on. Again, I will not finish it before I leave, but I'm getting closer to halfway done, and so I'm going to keep working on this and hopefully finish it up maybe before the end of the year. That would be a great goal for me, and this would also be a great Christmas knit project, so I might take it with me, and then if I have leftovers, I can use them for fun knitted hats, which I actually did with the leftovers from the previous project. You can see that the front and back are not the same. On the back, you basically end up with striping, which is not, I don't dislike the back side of the blanket, but of course the front side of the blanket is a lot more fun. So that was the whip that I'm working on. Somehow I managed to kill 30 minutes talking about various things, so I'm going to wrap up in a quick couple minutes about where I'm going and what I am doing. So my husband and I are going on a trip to Norway. This is probably not the best time to be doing this, and I fully acknowledge that. Back in 2019, we went on a trip to Ireland, and it was through a group called Race to Adventure, and it's Race to Adventure, the number 2, and it is a group, it is a running vacation, which is up my husband's alley, not terribly up mine, although I do jog a little up to a 5K or a 10K. The trip provider, organizer, is someone who coordinates a lot of those eco-challenge trips. I don't know if you've seen any of those on television. Basically, they drop people in very rustic rural places or kind of wild jungles, and they have to survive their way out, and it's a team competition, and they have to do all kinds of things, including running and biking and kayaking and pulling themselves up on ropes and like all kinds of crazy challenges. This is not quite that. What this is it is a tour through a country, or sometimes he does multiple countries, and almost every day you do a 5K or a 10K as part of the trip. So you get up, you get on the bus, we go somewhere, you get off the bus, you run your 5 or 10K, you get back on the bus, they take you sightseeing, and you move to the next town, and then you usually have a few hours either for lunch or in the afternoon free to wander the towns. It is a great way to see the countries. It is nice because it provides us, basically what we pay for is we pay ahead of time for almost everything, including the, we do like the, I don't want to say the luxury buses, but you know, the buses with upholstered seats, the big ones, there's a bathroom on the bus. You know, it's not literally like a school bus with seats. And those coaches take us around to all of our destinations. All of our hotels are included. Almost all of our meals are included unless they drop us off in town on our own, or we want to go out like to a bar in the evening. Alcohol is not covered, but almost all of our breakfast, lunch, and dinner for almost every day are covered. Plus, if group is going on a tour, and we do sometimes tour attractions. It includes your admission to all of those attractions. So it's basically a great way for us to see the country without having to rent a car and plan the whole trip ourselves. Plus we get a little bit of exercise. So this is basically like the trip that we did in 2019 to Ireland, but this time we are going to Norway. So as I said, it's not necessarily the ideal time to be traveling with COVID and everything else going on. The deal is that we paid for this trip quite a while ago. We registered for a couple trips with him. After our first trip in 2019, we went ahead and signed on to take a few more trips with him over the years, and they have continually gotten postponed and postponed and postponed, and Norway is going now. So we don't really have a choice in terms of it, you know, this is our only choice would be not to go and to forfeit the money. And so we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're wearing our masks. We have been staying in mostly for the last week or so, and we're going to wear our masks. And Norway itself is about 95% vaccinated, and they do not have any restrictions currently, nor do they have the same kind of virus spike we have here. So my hope is that if we can get through the airport in the airplanes without catching anything, that we will have a great time. And of course, we'll be spending a lot of time in Norway out of doors because we're going to be running. We're going to be exploring the fjords and hiking. We're going to do a glacier hike one day. So we have lots of fun things planned. And of course, there will be a little bit of yarn tourism. I don't want to say my compensation because it's not like I don't have fun on these tours, but my husband knows that when we go someplace that involves a healthy yarn industry, that there will be yarn shopping. So we're spending a day in Oslo just being tourists before the whole thing begins, and I have a couple yarn stores picked out there, and he actually found me. We are going to be in the valley where the Rauma factory is located, Rauma Garn, and they have a few. I'm sure they don't think of them as outlet stores. That's the American in me. But there are a couple stores advertised as having Rauma yarns. So we're going to go to a couple of those. Actually, he was even the one who said, hey, you know, we're going to be here and there are all these yarn stores. We should do this on our free afternoon. So there will be yarn tourism. There will be lots of fun. There will be pictures. Please, if you don't already follow me on Instagram, I'm at Fluffy Kira there. And I will be sharing photos as we go throughout our trip. And of course, I will share photos with you on the podcast when I get back. I will have some knitting content. I am taking a top for myself, kind of a summer tea top to knit because it's kind of lightweight and easy and portable, and it only requires 2 needles and 1 cake of yarn and a pattern, and then I'm bringing some sock projects because, of course, nobody can have too many socks. And, of course, I will buy some yarn while I'm there, so I could cast on for something else. But I am looking forward to it. I will say that a break or a vacation cannot come too soon because the last 2.5 years have been a lot for all of us. And I hope that everyone gets a little bit of break and a little time for R&R, whether you're staying home or going elsewhere. So the next 2 Mondays, I will not be here. I will join you again Monday, August 29th. I guess that's technically 3 Mondays? 21 days? 3 weeks. I will join you again Monday, August 29th. And I will bring a taste of my travels back to share with you. So I hope that you have a lovely couple weeks ahead. I hope you find lots of joy in your crafting. Stay healthy, stay cool if you're in hot areas, and warm if you're in cold areas. And I will see you soon. I will say, as I always say, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.